The arena reeked of roasted fungus and old blood, an oddly nostalgic scent to anyone who'd ever attended the intergalactic duel of species. The air shimmered with low-grade gravity distortion, causing lesser spectators to clutch the edges of their seats, or in the case of the float-borne Thrix delegation, lose their balance entirely and spiral upward with undignified squeals. Vendors hawked iridescent meat cubes. Screechball teens wore face paint of their favorite champions. Somewhere above it all, in a rotating cube of commentary mist, 3 gelatinous sports analysts argued about betting spreads in untranslatable gurgles, while a subtitle drone made its best effort. And that's why you never bet against a tentacle with rhythm. The duel of species was not, technically, a sport. It was diplomacy with a kill count, a ceremonial clash where warriors from rival races thumped each other into bloody puddles while various planetary empires bartered over mining rights and parade routes. Victors earned glory, trade contracts, and the right to rename moons. Losers were, if lucky, composted. Today's crowd numbered in the billions, streamed live to 97 systems, plus one elderly AI satellite that only watched because it was lonely. The announcer's voice boomed through the arena in 5 languages simultaneously, accompanied by a holographic firework shaped like a particularly vulgar species mating gesture. And now, for the crowd favorite, a matchup so lopsided, even our sponsors are nervous. The crowd roared. Flashing lights twisted the shadows across the sand, revealing claw marks, dried ichor, and a suspicious number of discarded snack wrappers. In the center of it all stood a platform slowly rising from the depths. Atop it, a single chair, bolted to the floor. Upon that chair, wrists shackled in front of her, sat a human woman. The audience paused, blinked, then began to laugh. Humans, after all, were entertainment. Adorable. Loud. Their wars were mostly internal and televised. Their weapons primitive and usually mislabeled vintage. Last season, a human had been disqualified for crying mid-match and throwing a shoe. But this one didn't cry. She didn't even blink. Ellie Mira Trask sat calmly, shoulders back, face unreadable. Her jumpsuit, gray, unadorned, standard issue for captured volunteer contestants, looked almost pressed. Her boots were scuffed, but aligned perfectly. Her hair, short and practical, didn't move even when the gravity stuttered. She was unremarkable in every visual way. And yet something about her unnerved even the gelatinous. Not that the audience noticed. They were too busy howling. The betting drones descended like flies. 3 credits she slips before the bell. 10 she cries. 50 she wets herself and asks for a translator. The odds ticked upward in a swirling neon display. KORGTL the breaker. 0.0002/Ellie Human. 4000.0. One Kruldar bet her own mate on the fight's outcome. A Flarn emissary pledged a diplomatic immunity card. The vibe was festive, if statistically one-sided. From the far end of the arena came a new sound, a deep, metallic bellow like a ship tearing itself in half. Korgthal the breaker stomped into view, each footstep cracking stone and vibrating across the bones of lesser species. 9 feet tall, obsidian-plated, with 2 primary arms and 4 auxiliary slicing limbs, Korgthal had the body of a wrecking machine and the mind of a motivational speaker who'd taken too many head injuries. His battle axe, coated in the dried remains of a terrestrial champion, gleamed in the lights. He raised both fists and roared. The audience answered with pure frenzy. In contrast, Ellie scratched her nose. "Is this going to be one of those long introductions?" she asked aloud, to no one in particular. Her voice was dry, clipped, and annoyingly calm. A nearby handler, a centipede in ceremonial robes, glared at her, rattled its mandibles, and hissed something that didn't translate well but involved the word exsanguinate. She turned to him, eyebrow raised. "I see. Very original." The handler backed away. The announcer returned with gusto. "Behold, the reigning champion of the Glor Syndicate, slayer of 238 challengers, undefeated in the blood trials of Starn. The demolisher of bone, the flayer of kings, the enthusiast of protein shakes, Korgthal." Korgthal pounded his chest so hard his armor cracked. And his opponent, Ellie, something? From Earth. The audience giggled. The betting odds twitched again. Ellie stood, slow and precise, the clink of her shackles barely audible over the crowd. She walked forward, measured and deliberate, stopping at the chalk line now glowing on the ground. Korgthol tilted his head. "You are food." She glanced up at him. "Only if you like indigestion." Korgthol laughed. It echoed. Somewhere in the bleachers, a squid fainted. From the commentator box, a voice piped up, "We're receiving clarification from the Glor camp. Yes, Korgthol believes the human will be an appetizer. Possibly tartar." The referee, an iridescent gas cloud with eyes, hovered between them and emitted a burst of scent to mark the start of the duel. The crowd leaned in. Korgthol took one thunderous step forward. And Ellie didn't move. Her breathing slowed. Not a flicker of panic. Her eyes flicked once, registering wind speed, gravitational shift, trajectory path, angle of descent. And Korgthol, utterly certain of his victory, raised his axe high. And paused. Just briefly. He saw something. Just for a second. In her stance, maybe. In the way her body was turned, a millimeter more closed than it should be. In the angle of her head, how her gaze tracked not him, but a point over his left shoulder. A sniper's calculation. But then it was gone. He lunged. She dodged. Not back. Forward. Straight into his blind zone. The crowd screamed. Some in confusion. Some in delight. A few in disappointment as their bets dissolved. Ellie hit the sand hard, rolled once, and came up on one knee. Her chains snapped, not by accident. Small metal charges, planted in the links, detonated precisely. She held the two halves of her shackles in her hands like blunt knives. The arena froze. Korgthol turned, mouth open. And Ellie smiled. It wasn't a wide smile. Not gloating. It was small. Professional. The kind you give just before the world changes shape. Somewhere far above, in the private observation suite, a Flarn admiral dropped her cocktail. "She moved like she knew the layout," she whispered. "She did," said the Kruldar beside her. "That pillar, that's a firing nest." Back in the arena, Ellie sprinted, gravity flickering again, up the broken pillar. She wasn't panicking. She was on a clock. Her own clock. Each step landed perfectly, calculated against the arena's rhythmic shift. The top of the pillar was cracked, ancient, dismissed as decorative. But inside, buried deep in pre-match boredom, was something else. Something she'd hidden there 6 weeks earlier, in a diplomatic crate labeled Emotional Support Rocks. A rifle. Collapsible. Matte black. Human-crafted. Illegal in 6 quadrants and 2 religions. She snapped it together mid-run, dropped to prone, and sighted in. Korgthol, halfway through a roar, stopped. She pulled the trigger. Soundless. The impact took the left segment of his helmet clean off. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Silence. Then static. Then the collective sound of a billion species saying some version of, "Wait, what?" Ellie lowered the rifle. Her chains lay in the sand. Her captors stared from the sidelines. She stood up slowly, carefully, every motion deliberate. The wind caught her jumpsuit. She adjusted her collar, looked up at the blinking lights, and said without emotion, "Reset the odds." She walked off the pillar as the crowd erupted. The duel wasn't over. It had just begun. The preparation chamber was, by galactic standards, unimpressive. A hexagonal box of thermal-neutral metal, ambient lighting set to interrogation chic, and a faint hum of recycled air trying its best not to smell like boiled insect repellent. There was a bench, a biometric lock panel, and a single surveillance orb tucked into the corner, pretending not to blink. Ellie Mira Trask sat cross-legged on the bench, calmly unraveling the last 12 minutes of arena activity in her head like someone mentally fixing a crossword puzzle written in blood and orbital velocity. Her right wrist was shackled to a curved anchor welded into the floor. The restraint had biometric sensors and an anti-tamper pulse node, advanced, impressive, and adorably pointless. She wasn't interested in escaping. Not yet. She was watching the hallway shadow. It flickered once, twice, the low thrum of uneven footsteps approaching. Someone big, heavy. The floor gave under their mass. Ellie didn't move, didn't tense. Instead, she slowly tilted her head, just enough to catch her reflection in the metallic wall, disheveled hair, a minor scrape on her cheek, and a look in her eyes that suggested she'd seen everything worth fearing, catalogued it, and moved on. Her captors still thought she was their pawn. This amused her. The door slid open with a noise like a mechanical yawn, and a delegation entered, 3 Glor officials, one tall, one wider, one with too many mandibles, a ranking Kruldar dignitary with ceremonial blood marks on her carapace, and a floating translator globe already struggling to keep up. "Specimen appears compliant," the globule said brightly, displaying humanoid posture and general lack of combat aura. Ellie lifted an eyebrow. "I had my combat aura dry-cleaned." The translator hesitated, then pulsed an error color. The tall Glor glanced at his tablet nervously. "She is exhibiting primitive sarcasm," he muttered to the others. "Indicates overcompensation, possibly fear." Ellie suppressed a smile. It wasn't fear. It was restraint. Tactical, disciplined restraint. She'd killed men who thought she flinched under pressure. They'd only been right once. "Tell us your designation," said the Kruldar, clicking her mandibles. "Rank, planet, breeding origin." Ellie considered several answers. Settled on the simplest. Mira Trask. Earth. Sniper. The floating orb gave a short buzz, searching the term. Sniper, archaic projectile specialist, non-energy based, used primarily by underdeveloped civilizations. Marked as obsolete in modern warfare databases. She tilted her head. Funny thing about databases. The Kruldar leaned forward. "Explain." They tend to assume people stop evolving after they're underestimated. No response. The room buzzed softly, as if the walls were waiting for the follow-up. The Glor officer, shifting uncomfortably, consulted his screen. According to galactic records, humans have no recorded arena victories. Combat designation rating is 437. Risk profile is labeled emotional, erratic, unpredictable. Prone to speech-making. "I haven't made a speech in years," Ellie replied. "Too many bullets in the way." The room grew a little quieter. The smaller Glor, the one with the stained epaulets, leaned forward with interest. "Where did you receive combat certification?" "I didn't. They gave me a rifle and a reason." The translator hesitated again. The Kruldar narrowed her eyes. "Your file was incomplete. We believe you were extracted from a war crime tribunal. You volunteered under duress." "Funny," Ellie said. "I volunteered because I was bored." That got a twitch from the tall one. He typed something into his tablet. Probably something about possible psychosis. She could almost see the form. Ellie shifted slightly on the bench. The shackle buzzed at the movement but didn't lock down. She was still playing within their parameters. Still the good little prisoner. They didn't realize the room was already hers. She'd memorized the timing on the surveillance blink, 3.2 seconds down every 47. Mapped the echo variance in the wall seams. Noted that the taller Glor had a limp in his right leg and an offhand sidearm holster poorly fitted for his species' digits. Amateurs, all of them. They didn't know what she was. That suited her fine. The door hissed again, and for the first time, the temperature in the room dropped perceptibly. Korgthul the Breaker entered. Even standing still, he felt like motion. A living avalanche wrapped in black-plated armor, with shoulders like freighter hulls and a face like someone had stapled knives to a bear. His primary hands were clasped behind his back, his secondary limbs flexed casually, metal claws clicking against each other like dice being rolled. Ellie stood. Not abruptly. Not as a challenge. Just enough to face him properly. He looked her over like one might assess a particularly fragile fruit. "This is the human," he said flatly. His voice was double-toned, one pitch for each lung. The Kruldar nodded. "Yes, champion." "She is small." Ellie blinked. "You're perceptive." Korgthol's mouth twitched. Could have been amusement. Could have been gas. She dies quickly? If she does not, said the Kruldar, we'll know something is wrong. Ellie's head tilted again, just slightly. Define wrong. Korgthol stepped forward. The others gave way instinctively. His presence was not just size, it was weight, gravitational and psychological. A career forged in battlefield dominance, layered in ceremonial blood and a sense of inevitability. But Ellie didn't move. She held his gaze, measured and exact, and what she didn't say was louder than anything she could have uttered. Korgthol, oddly, seemed to sense it. His head cocked, as if detecting a different frequency. You do not tremble. I'm not cold, she replied. His eyes narrowed. He reached for his axe, slowly, not to threaten, just a gesture. I have killed thousands. Champions. Beasts. Armies. I've killed people who said the same thing, Ellie said. Silence fell over the room. Korgthol's claws clicked together. He gave a sound, deep and low. Not a laugh. Not quite. You amuse me, human. Ellie didn't smile. You bore me. There was a shift, then. Imperceptible, but real. The others felt it too. The easy dynamic, hunter and prey, had slipped just a little. She could feel them recalculating. It wouldn't help. The Glor officers filed out in silence. The Kruldar made a clicking snarl and followed. Korgthol lingered a beat longer, staring at her. Then, without another word, he turned and left. The room reset to silence. Ellie sat again, wrists in front, posture straight. The orb twitched. You engaged in dominance ritual? I spoke. Tone suggests victory declaration. She looked at the orb. You should update your database. The lights dimmed slightly, as if embarrassed. Time passed. Not much. Enough for another echo scan of the hall. Enough to hear the shift in the crowd outside, their attention turning from mockery to curiosity. She heard the betting odds recalibrate, just a hair. The air changed. She closed her eyes. Inside her head, everything lined up. She could feel the pressure points of the coming battle forming, like watching tectonic plates drift toward impact. Every motion she'd made, every line delivered, every unspoken beat, intentional. Let them believe she was arrogant. Let them think she was clever but doomed. Humans did so well in that role. Cute, tragic, plucky. She could almost hear the narrators scripting her demise. But the truth was cleaner. She wasn't here to win a match. She was here to demonstrate a principle. That humans didn't need to evolve faster than the galaxy. They just needed to aim better. The door buzzed again. A Glor handler stepped in. Didn't speak. Just pointed. It was time. Ellie stood. The shackle unlocked with a hiss. She flexed her wrist once. No need to hide the motion. They thought it wouldn't matter. She followed the handler out into the light. The corridor hummed beneath her feet, the metal soft with heat, carrying her toward the waiting crowd, toward the arena, toward the execution they were all so eager to watch. She gave them the walk they wanted. Slow. Calm. Stoic. Just enough fragility in her step to feed the odds. Every eye was on her. Every angle recorded. Every analysis told them what to expect. She was the variable they hadn't accounted for. And it was already too late. The arena shimmered in the heat of its own spotlight. Thousands of drones hovered above like mechanized carrion, beaming the feed to every civilized and semi-civilized corner of the galaxy. The sand under Ellie Mira Trask's boots wasn't real sand. It was heat-reactive memory grit, designed to hold a trace of the battle's blood for commemorative trophies. She would have found that ironic, if she weren't cataloging its grip quality against sudden lateral movement. A synthetic breeze kicked in, not for comfort but for dramatic cloak flourishes. She didn't have a cloak. She had a jumpsuit, a slight limp from yesterday's dislocation reset, and a mind like a coiled rangefinder. Korgthol stood on the opposite side of the dueling grounds, looming like an allegory for extinction. His axe, 7 feet of alloy and vengeance, rested across one shoulder. His secondary arms were folded, a stance that indicated supreme confidence or mild indigestion. Hard to tell with his species. The announcer's voice filtered through the upper dome with an enthusiasm that felt pre-apocalyptic. Citizens of the civilized starways, prepare your eyes and equivalent sensory clusters for the first blow. And remember, all kinetic ruptures are property of the arena. Please do not attempt to monetize your trauma. The gong sounded. Not a metaphorical one, a real one. It was struck by a three-eyed monk from the Order of Kinetic Truth, who'd been doing this job since before half the species in attendance were sapient. Korgthul moved first. It was not elegant. It was a planetary event. His footfall cracked the arena plating. His lunge displaced air fast enough to send Ellie's hair back from her face. She didn't dodge. She waited. 1, 2, then pivoted. The blade caught her left shoulder. Not deep, not clean, but enough to draw blood and reactions from at least 5 betting booths. She staggered. Just slightly. Enough to sell it. The audience screamed. A dozen diplomats clapped. One jellyfish fainted from excitement. Korgthul snarled, a sound that shook fillings loose from spectators in row 3, and swung again. This time, she dropped flat. Sand in the mouth, knee in the grit, ribs twisting just far enough to avoid decapitation. The axe slammed into the arena floor beside her and sparked upward with kinetic fury. The sparks mattered, because she counted them. 9 full arcs. Elemental steel. Each one bouncing differently off the ground's curvature. She logged the angle. Then she rolled. Human is evasive, one commentator noted, his voice warbling in 7 chords. Possibly due to fear instincts. She's measuring, said the other, in the deep bass dialect of bureaucracy. They just haven't realized it yet. Ellie wasn't running. She was timing. Korgthul advanced, roaring, arrogant, fueled by a dozen species worth of crowd adoration. He didn't notice the way she always fell left. Or how she kept her right side guarded, not in defense, but in protection of something else. They thought she had nothing. She had a plan. The pillar waited behind her. Not just any pillar. The ornamental one, 3 meters off the wall curve, reinforced with steel scaffolding hidden under centuries of ceremonial engravings. It wasn't there for style. She'd installed the frame during her pre-match inspection weeks ago, under the guise of participating in the ritual blessing of terrain. She hadn't blessed anything. She'd buried her rifle. It wasn't even a real rifle, not by galactic standards. It had no plasma casing, no nanite scope. It was, by some definitions, quaint. But it worked. Because she did. Korgthul swung again, this time a horizontal arc that would have bisected a normal opponent. Ellie ducked, shoulder-slammed the arena wall, and used the rebound to shoot up the pillar. Gravity pulsed. A setting shift, part of the arena's unpredictability protocol. She calculated it mid-air. Adjusted. Her boots landed perfectly on the pillar's first rung. Another step. A pause. Korgthul turned, confused. He hadn't lost sight of her. His species rarely lost track of prey, but he hadn't expected the verticality. It wasn't part of the typical human flail-and-fail technique. She reached the top. Her fingers moved fast, unsealing a thin hatch behind a decorative faceplate. Inside, metal, matte, precision machined. The rifle clicked together in 3 motions. Korgthul roared. Coward! Ellie didn't answer. She lay prone, shouldered the weapon, adjusted for arena drift. Inhale. Long controlled. She'd made shots like this through burning atmospheres. Through smoke and gravity eddies. Through the ribcage of a collapsing freighter. The target was 9 feet tall and angry. She didn't aim for the obvious. Her finger rested lightly against the trigger. She waited. Waited. A blink. A pause in his gait. Left foot heavier. Impact ripple uneven. Minor fracture from a prior match. It was healing, but slowly. She aimed for the knee. The trigger pulled itself. The sound was more felt than heard, compressed air and math. The bullet moved like it had something to prove. Impact. Korgthol's leg buckled. The crowd gasped. Not in pain. Not in horror. In confusion. Champions didn't fall. Korgthol dropped to one knee, snarling, confused, staring at the smoke rising from his limb. His axe hit the ground beside him, wobbling in protest. Ellie didn't celebrate. She adjusted. Next shot. Through the wrist. The moment the primary weapon fell, she took the shot. Korgthol's hand went slack. The axe rolled from his grasp. The drones zoomed in on her face. Still calm. Still quiet. The announcers, for once, said nothing. Korgthol tried to stand. She let him. He staggered upright, dripping from wounds that hissed against his armor. "Fight fair," he growled. "I am," she replied. He lunged, last effort, final gamble, the kind of charge that cracked mountains in less reinforced arenas. She stood from the rifle perch, stepped forward, dropped. Her third shot went into the sand, not into him. It kicked up a blast of grit and debris, deliberate, controlled. It blinded him, just long enough. She leapt. Knees hit his shoulders. Her hand gripped his backup blade. She'd seen it earlier, uselessly ornamental, more symbol than weapon. She took it, and pressed it against the exposed seam of his armor at the neck. "Yield," she said. He tried to turn. She pressed harder. "Yield." The word hit the sound system. Amplified. The crowd went silent. Korgthol looked up. His three eyes flicked between rage, confusion, and, finally, understanding. He dropped his last set of arms. The surrender pulse blinked from his collar node. Ellie stepped off him. The sand beneath her boots hissed where blood hit. The lights flared. Announcers scrambled. "And that's, wait, is that legal? Was that a sanctioned? Did she win?" No fatality recorded. Surrender acknowledged. Technical knockout. The decision flashed in holographic display. Victory. Human. There was a pause. A vacuum. Then the sound began. Not cheering. Not immediately. First, shock. Then disbelief. Then a roar, unfiltered and unclassifiable. Some species clapped. Others shrieked. The Kruldar let out a war chant reserved for funerals and unexpected tax refunds. Ellie turned once. Stared at the crowd. Then looked at Korgthol, still kneeling. "You're strong," she said. He grunted. "You're inevitable." She walked away. Didn't run. Didn't wave. No bows. No speeches. Just boots on memory-reactive sand, tracking a line no one had ever walked before. Up in the commentator cube, a drone twitched. "I believe," it said slowly, "we have just recalibrated the human combat index." Ellie paused at the gate. Looked over her shoulder once. The crowd quieted again. She raised her right hand. Not in victory. In warning. The arena dimmed. She exited. And the galaxy, very quietly, updated its list of threats. The silence lasted longer than anyone anticipated. Across the galaxy's neural broadcast grid, trillions of spectators stared at frozen streams, buffering reels, and blinking caption drones trying to rewrite the laws of probability in real time. Somewhere deep in the fiscal heart of the Flarn Trade Confederation, an investment AI dropped its latte and spontaneously resigned. On the betting moons of Telluria 4, 3 major houses declared bankruptcy, and one octopus-based syndicate tried to sue Gravity. And in the center of the arena, Mira Trask walked. Not fast. Not triumphant. Not chaste. Just steady steps across the cooling sand, her rifle slung casually in one hand like a picnic basket. Behind her, Korgthol knelt, defeated but not broken, staring at the sky like it had personally betrayed him. He wouldn't speak for several days. When he finally did, it was a quiet apology to his ancestors, and a warning to anyone who used the word primitive in his presence again. The arena doors hissed open, not ceremonially but reactively, as if unsure how to treat a winner it hadn't expected. The light overhead dimmed slightly, less a spotlight than an awkward shrug. No announcer greeted her exit. No official medal ceremony awaited. Just a line of Glore security officers who looked like they'd rather be elsewhere, and a diplomatic coordinator nervously clutching 3 incompatible data tablets. Champion Mira Trask, he stammered, attempting to read from all 3 at once. By Clause 17 of the Unified Combat Charter and Subarticle 1142 of the Gladiatorial Dispute Protocol. No, she said. He blinked. No. What? No title. No obligations. No interviews. No parade. But it's traditional. So is underestimating me, she replied and walked past him. In the control suites above, a diplomatic conference had erupted into what one historian later described as a choreographed panic spiral. Ambassadors shouted across frequencies. Treaty drones short-circuited. The Glore Syndicate's public relations AI rebooted 3 times before issuing a blanket apology and a coupon for discounted burial services. Within 20 standard minutes, the Galactic Council issued a formal request to review the classification of Earth in the Combat Index. The proposal included words like anomalous, reassessment, and, dear gods, what else are they hiding? At the same time, several war-minded civilizations began scanning Earth's history, only to collectively flinch upon discovering the term sniper wasn't ceremonial. It was occupational, repeated, perfected, practiced in forests, deserts, mountains, and sometimes school cafeterias when no one was looking. The Kruldar ambassador threw her drink across the room. The Flarn head of war diplomacy ordered a reassessment of the term human fragility. The Trask footage looped endlessly. The fall, the shot, the kneeling champion, the walk-off. They studied her eyes, her stance, her refusal to monologue. It disturbed them. And somewhere on Earth, the United Terran representative to the Galactic Council opened his inbox, saw the 10,000 diplomatic queries, and muttered, "Oh no, she did it again." Ellie stood outside the arena now, alone on the landing pad. The sky overhead was a soft, oily pink. 2 suns lingered at the horizon like gossiping coals. She could still hear the residual roar of the crowd, far enough to blur, close enough to know they were still talking about her. Her rifle rested in its case at her side. A maintenance drone tried to scan it and shorted out mid-beep. A transport vessel waited. She didn't board it. Not yet. A soft click behind her. Quiet, deliberate. Ellie didn't turn. You walk like someone who thinks they're not being noticed. The Kruldar ambassador exhaled, which for her species sounded like a dying accordion. We underestimated you. No, Ellie said. You disrespected me. It's different. I represent a lot of offended interests right now. I represent one planet. That planet now has diplomatic leverage. You understand what you've done. Yes, Ellie said. I reminded them we exist. The ambassador paused. We'd like to offer. No. You haven't heard it yet. I've heard it all before. Offers. Threats. Elevation. You could train others. Form an alliance. Lead a unit. Ellie turned, finally. Do you know what I want? The ambassador blinked all 4 eyes. I want to be left alone. I want the next time someone sees a human, they remember this moment. Not out of fear. Not out of awe. Just enough awareness to stop assuming we're harmless. And then, Ellie looked up at the stars. Then maybe we'll stop having to prove it. The ambassador hesitated. You're wasting your influence. Or preserving it, Ellie said. The vessel hissed open. She walked past the ambassador and boarded without another word. The hatch closed behind her. Inside the transport, silence. A simple seat. No escort. No broadcast team. Just the thrum of propulsion systems and a complimentary snack cube on the armrest. Ellie sat. Popped the cube into her mouth. Strawberry. Terrible. She ate it anyway. As the ship lifted, she let herself breathe for the first time in hours. Not relief. Not victory. Just exhalation. Behind her, the The arena shrank to a dot. The roar became static. Then nothing. She didn't smile. Didn't cry. She adjusted her rifle case, closed her eyes, and slept. Elsewhere, bureaucracies scrambled. By midnight Galactic Standard, 10 think tanks had convened to discuss the Trask anomaly. 3 planets drafted new sniper-related treaties. 1 backwater militia tried to name her a saint. The Galactic Combat Index updated its entry on Earth from charming and erratic to currently being reconsidered, approach with caution. And in the private viewing chamber of the Galactic Council, High Arbiter Varnthal replayed the footage for the 12th time. She knelt. He lunged. The shot. The silence. The walk. He looked at his aide. Send a message to her world. What should I say? Just 2 words. Yes, sir. The message reached Earth's embassy hours later. It read, understood. Respectfully.